get down to execution, who executes? Obviously, there are other different bodies. There is the Department of Wildlife Conservation, there is the Department of Forests, there is the Ministry of Environment, right. The other thing that the other thing that we need to understand is conservation of forests and preservation of habitats cannot be done in isolation. Remember, we have basically conservation has to be thought through the lens of human security, and the basic facets of that are water, shelter and energy. Right. So it is only when there is an equilibrium there that there is a balance. Now, in order to do that, conservation problems are not confined or isolated to the Wildlife Department, for example, or the Department of Forests, for example, or the Ministry of Environment. We really need to work in tandem. There has to be a lot of collaboration, understanding, right? For example, we're an agricultural country, we have to work with the Ministry of Irrigation. And that has to happen. So unless that really happens, we're going to have a problem. Now, in answering your question, to answer your question now, why isn't it probably happening adequately? Or my recommendation, or the WMPs would like to see happening better, is that we need these plans, they are very well done, but the KPIs of these plans are probably confined to that plan and those stakeholders. So no one else is probably aware of it. So this has to be understood throughout. These plans, execution of these plans has to be financed. So we got to have people like the Ministry, the Department of National Planning, which is the Finance Ministry, coming in. How do you finance these things? And also the Agriculture Ministry, the Irrigation Department, right? So this is what is needed for better conservation. And of course, we got to go into, again, re-looking at, by doing what we call strategic environment assessments, re-looking at now, with using technology, demarcating and redefining our protected spaces. We got a lot of unprotected spaces as well. So then we know what can be touched, what cannot be touched. We're very clear. Right? So that's I think how it should be approached. Solutions come only if you understand the root cause very well. And we got to go back and take a look at the root cause. Unquestionably, Sri Lanka we've been a land that we've been living with elephants, for thousands of years. And the current status is that we have approximately 62% of the land of Sri Lanka being cohabited by elephants and humans. We have about 18% of elephants in protected spaces, 44% of the elephants live outside together with settlements and humans. So that by itself, that's where it is in terms of demographics and the animal demographics. Now, why is the conflict arising? Again, going back to what I was telling you, this whole concept of looking at these through the lens of these plans, re-looking at the data. We've got, obviously, elephants move through certain corridors. They move in very, very predetermined tracts and spaces. What we call elephant corridors. The moment you start blocking those corridors with development activity, anthropogenic activity, human settlements, you're obviously going to upset that rhythm, and then you're going to have conflict. Now, how can you possibly stop that? Of course, understanding data of your corridors, your spaces, your protected areas probably need to be relooked at. We had things like, going back to your question, the other state forests, which were kind of in between the jurisdiction of the department. They were under the purview of the Department for Forests, but in between the Department of Forests and the Department of Wildlife Conservation. And a few years ago, that was degazetted, and now there is provision for the local government bodies to issue some of these plots of land for development, which is again an action that's quite detrimental to any solution for the human-elephant conflict. So essentially, there's a national plan done again by a group of experts. We have some tremendous scientists in the country who have proposed a national plan, and in 2020 there was a presidential task force appointed, and this plan was presented. It's all out there, the solutions are all out there, and suggestions. I think that plan needs to be looked at, obviously updated, and then actioned, because unquestionably there is a wealth of information on elephant behavior and also on the solutions. It's all there. So again, stop, prevent, mitigate, they're all important. Now, you've got to look at it in, again, in context. We've got two very good pieces of legislation. One is the Flora and Fauna Protection Act. One is the Forest Ordinance. Now, those two obviously really need, as an initial step, could be possibly relooked at in terms of seeing how we can address this. There are provisions, but they need to be given more teeth, obviously. So for that, possibly they need to be revisited. Things like the fines have to be relooked at. We've also probably got to get more involvement with law enforcement, and in order to ensure that these pieces of legislation are really given teeth, because they are really strong pieces of legislation, and we got the Department of Forest, Department of Wildlife Conservation, who can really action them. So essentially, that we're a signatory to the Paris Agreement. We already, we've signed mostly all international covenants and agreements. We have a very detailed document for adaptation and mitigation right across many sectors. It's called the Nationally Determined Contributions document by the Ministry of Environment, which really has to be revisited. And this document, again, can't stand alone in isolation. This document is a very, very detailed document that spans across various sectors, from energy to tourism to transport to conservation. So this is a across-the-board document with very clear, detailed actions. And I think this needs to be revisited with exigency. That's unquestionable. It's non-negotiable, sorry. And everyone, policymakers, really need to revisit these things and look at all their decisions. And I say, all the questions you've been asking me, it's all interrelated. All their decisions through the lens of these fantastic plans that we have, and also stating here that we really need to understand the value of our natural capital, and our natural capital is so rich in our biodiversity. I think that's something that every policymaker needs to really understand. It is mandatory. It is something that this country is endowed with. Our natural capital, no one else in the world probably has this type of species richness, where a country that has 20%, 30% endemicity, that's massive. So what are we doing about it in terms of, we have a massive competitive advantage there. So policymakers really need to understand the value of the biodiversity and our natural capital. So that by itself feeds into climate change, greening initiatives, looking at what you do in the cities, etc. Political interference will happen. It's going to be a very, very tough challenge to say there won't be political influence, because eventually what politicians are looking for, obviously looking to broad-base their voter base. So it is bound to happen. But what really can be done is, again, there has to be the will, there has to be a much more longer-term perspective to this, and as I said, I hope as things are being looked afresh, I think something that we really need to do is to revisit the IP, all the documentation, the plans that we have. There has to be a concerted effort to do that, to value our natural capital, and to look at how best we can execute. So, to ensure that you're probably going to get more effective but that needs to be understood, and that's going to be a long one, a very long one. So we need a lot of political will for that, but there's a lot of people out there, like say for example the WMPS, who would love to engage and on how best we can get about getting results, ensuring that we have sustainable development right across, and ensuring that we have development, we also have ensuring that our natural capital is conserved. So it is a long-term effort, but I think it can be done, but you need the will, and it's all there. It's just a matter of going back to the drawing boards.